And thank you for joining us here on KV Plus. I'm Jenny Lee.
And I'm Rob Evans. We're bringing you special live coverage of last night's protests against immigration and customs enforcement that led to arrests in Austin. And according to Governor Greg Abbott, Austin police and Texas DPS arrested more than a dozen demonstrators last night.
People have been camped out at the Travis County Jail waiting for protesters to be released. Austin police getting ready to fill us in on their side of the enforcement. Let's listen in. Chief Lisa Davis just approached the podium.
Austin. I want to take the time to walk through what our officers encountered, how we are preparing for the days ahead, and provide specific information regarding arrests, officer injuries, and our continued response efforts. The information we are sharing today is preliminary, and the numbers and information may change as we gather a comprehensive understanding of the events that took place. And this is in the spirit of being as transparent and as accountable as we can be. You guys know I like to get in front of you with the facts as soon as we have them. So the protest began at the Texas Capitol, where the grounds were closed. Protesters then moved through downtown Austin. Both the Department of Public Safety and the Austin Police Department worked collaboratively to safely block off traffic and allow marchers to peacefully march. The crowd ultimately gathered in front of the Federal Building, where some individuals began defacing the property with graffiti. Officers issued dispersal orders at that point and moved the crowd westward along 8th Street. At this time, the two individuals that were spray painting on the building were arrested for criminal mischief. Shortly after, tensions began to escalate and agitators began throwing rocks at officers, and one officer was spit on in the eye by a protester. In response, officers briefly withdrew back to de-escalate to see if it would calm the situation. At that point, the crowd quickly began advancing back toward the Federal Building. Officers held the line at that point to prevent further property damage and to protect both the protesters and themselves, deploying pepper ball towards the ground to saturate the area so the protesters could not move back toward the Federal Building. DPS then deployed CS gas to disperse the crowd. The crowd broke up into smaller groups at this point, one of which continued marching and began throwing scooters and barricades into roadways and overturning water barricades. Officers monitored the groups and were able to contain the crowd near 7th Street and Congress. Multiple arrests were made, and the remaining participants moved to the sidewalk and eventually dispersed. There were a total of 4 officers injured. At this time, all officers have been released from the hospital and treated for their injuries. 3 officers were injured by rocks being thrown at the crowd, and these were large, very large rocks. These were no small pebbles. 1 officer sustained a shoulder injury during an arrest, during which he was also spit on. APD arrested a total of 8 individuals. This is them. And the charges range from graffiti at the Federal Building to harassment of a public servant to failure to obey a lawful order, resisting arrest, and again, interference with public duties. As we prepare for the potential of additional demonstrations, we know that Saturday is going to be a day of demonstrations as well. I want you to know what you're going to be seeing. You're going to be seeing an increase in visibility of officers. We will be at 100% staffing for officers this weekend. Our goal remains clear. It is protect the safety and the rights of everyone, community members and officers alike. Again, it is a fundamental right to protest. However, when that protest turns violent, when it turns to throwing rocks, throwing bottles at officers, at other members of the public and community, that will not be tolerated. Arrests will be made. I've spoken to the DA and I've also spoken to the sheriff here in Travis County. And we have spoken about charges and spoken about jail space that may be needed if we do have to make arrests. Again, that is not something that we want to do. I want to support peaceful protests. If you want to stand in the street and it's for hours, I will help facilitate that and I will help support that. But again, it cannot turn violent. We cannot damage, deface property, and we certainly cannot throw bottles and rocks and other things at our officers. We are also leveraging technology to help us monitor and respond effectively. We used drones last night because the fear was when members started surrounding the Federal Building was, were they going to break the glass? And so we used drones to be able to fly over to actually see that they were spray painting with graffiti at that point. And so when we let the plan was, once that crowd thinned out, was to go arrest the 2 identified in the graffiti with the criminal mischief. So that went well. So we're going to continue to use that technology. Also using dialogue policing. Dialogue policing is something you're going to see officers dressed like me, but they'll have a lighter colored vest over their uniform. They will be in the crowd talking with people that are there for the protest. The goal is to make contact with people that are there before the actual protest, if we know who they are. Otherwise, we're going to be in the crowd kind of talking about what are the rules for peacefully protesting. What does that look like? And then I think that also gives them an opportunity, people that are planning these protests, most of them don't want the agitators in the crowd. And so when they are recognizing that that's what this is becoming, it gives them an opportunity to reach out to the officers in the dialogue policing, and we can go have those bad actors removed immediately, because that's the goal, is once we see bad behavior, we see people with unlawful behavior, we go in, we remove them immediately, and the protest can peacefully then continue. That's the goal. And so again, to be absolutely clear, we support these peaceful protests, but we will take necessary action against agitators who engage in illegal acts and endanger public safety. So I appreciate, again, you coming. I'll take a few questions at this time.
Chief, how many other people that...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you had about deployment of tear gas, people were saying that it was probably APD, but they were also saying it could have been DPS. Can you just talk about that?
The gas that was CS gas. That was deployed by DPS. Austin deployed the pepper ball. And so when the pepper ball is put at the ground, and it allows the pepper spray to come up to disperse those crowds to make sure they're not coming toward the federal building. That's what it was used for last night.
Chief, of the people who were arrested,
I'm sorry, let me get her and then I'll come right to you, sir.
Could you just clarify at what point officers began to change their response in terms of responding to the protests last night?
Yeah, I think it was at that point when they came to the federal building, and we saw that again, we saw them rushing toward there, and the fear was that they were breaking the glass to get into the federal building. But that's kind of when the dynamic changes, when we recognized that the graffiti, they were defacing the building, and that's when the dynamic changed. Yes, sir.
The 8 people who were arrested, are they all from Austin, or are they outsiders?
I believe that they are all, from what I understand, they're all from Austin.
And are they individuals who are directly linked to any organized group that APD or DPS or the Fusion Center has identified as a problem group?
I do not know that at this time.
Did Austin Police know that the DPS was going to get involved with the riot control and all that?
Well, this is the reality. We are fortunate enough. We live in a capital city, and they are responsible for the Capitol. They are responsible. They these are federal buildings, government buildings. So we work cooperatively with DPS all the time. So of course they're going to be there to support us, and likewise us to them.
You said 3 officers were hit with rocks, and that's how they were injured. What about the 4th?
Yeah, a shoulder injury.
How?
Making the arrest, the shoulder injury.
And almost 3, you captured all the 3 individuals who threw the rocks?
Yes.
Chief, when we sat down with you back in January and February, you guys sort of explained your stance on working with ICE. Is there anything more that you can tell us about what you guys have been asked to do regarding immigration since we last sat down with you in January and February?
No, it has not changed. The policies and procedures here, the general orders remain the same. They have not changed. If we are on a traffic stop and someone is stopped and it is a detainer, we call, which has been common practice here. If they can come out, they will come out. If they can't, they'll say get accurate and updated information on where they're living, and we'll pass that information on. We have been asked to do nothing out of the ordinary. And so it is something when you're looking at local law enforcement, and our goal is always about community safety. It's about community relationships and building trust. And so it's hard when this is a dynamic, when we're looking at federal level issues, that we're local law enforcement. So to build trust and to continue that, it's a little challenging in these times, that's for sure.
Are y'all still using beanbag guns?
We do not. We do not use beanbag.
Pepper?
Yes, the pepper ball.
Is that a problem that y'all are limited in regards to your less than lethal?
I don't think so at this point. I mean, they were successful last night. You have to use tools at your disposal. Absolutely, the shields to use for, to protect officers from getting things thrown, those things are going to be utilized, and we'll utilize the tools that we have.
I talked to a lawyer representing one of the protesters. He said he filed a motion, and in order to ensure that the evidence gathered from last night, whether it be body camera surveillance video, be protected, and kind of saying, alluding to the fact that police officers tend to get rid of that. Can you speak to what he's claiming?
Well, I would say that that's a very bogus claim, and he is more than welcome to call me and have a conversation with me, but we are not in the business of destroying evidence.
Last question. Can you confirm that officers used pepper spray last night?
We used the pepper ball. And so if you think about a line where the officers are trying to hold that line and they're all against each other, putting that pepper ball at the sidewalk, at the ground, and they are not targeting a person, they are targeting the ground to saturate, so this group does not move forward. That's what we used it for.
You said that you're preparing for Saturday. Sorry, I'm done.
That's okay, I see you.
Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and how you guys are working with DPS to ensure the safety of protesters and this message
Yeah.
of being able to...
Right, I think there's absolutely a responsibility, right, that we have. One is to prepare to keep people safe and our officers safe. But there's also a responsibility for the people that are going to these protests as well. And so we have to come up with plans that when we do announce a dispersal, that the innocent people that are there that are not caught up in this, that there are exits available to them to leave and they can do that safely. That's our responsibility to do. And so when we're preparing for Saturday, preparing for other events, it is always about how do we keep citizens safe, how do we keep our officers safe? And that's through our special response teams, with those with that extra training of looking at how to deal with crowds, the dialogue policing, getting people in there. Look, this is what to expect. What can we expect from you? Are you planning on marching? How can we help facilitate that?
Chief, I know you guys the last question, but building off of
Yep.
that, in regards to preparing, are you bringing in any outside police departments to help DPS for preparing for the weekend? Because we've done that in the past.
Yeah, no, sir. No, it is us, and DPS will certainly help. They have their own area of responsibility to look at, and then we'll be working cooperatively with them as well. Thank you.
Thanks for taking this section.
Absolutely. Thank you. No worries. Thank you.
And we have been listening to Austin Police Chief Lisa Davis giving us an update, providing an update after last night's demonstration in downtown Austin, people protesting the ICE, the raids that have been going on. So here's what she said. This is preliminary information, she said. So they closed the Texas Capitol and a crowd started going to downtown. Austin Police, DPS, they worked together to make sure everyone's safe. Now, when the crowd arrived at the J.J. Pickle Federal Building on 8th Street, that's when things got out of hand. According to the chief, 2 people were arrested for spray painting that building, and there was a real fear that that crowd was going to start breaking windows. So APD deployed drones, used technology to help them with this peaceful gathering there. Things started getting out of hand, Rob. The rocks were thrown at police.
Yeah, I understand that 4 officers were actually injured and all have been released. 3 officers injured by what the deputy or the police chief rather said was very large rocks. 1 police officer was injured making an arrest. 1 officer, we're told, was actually spit in the eye. 8 arrests again. 8 people arrested. We saw their images there. All of them, we're told, are from Austin. Things like harassment, resisting arrest, criminal mischief. But they are, again, they're prepared for more of this happening, Jenny, this weekend.
No, we mentioned 8 arrests. That's, you see them on your screen. But the governor tweeted out that there were more than a dozen. So at this point, we don't know if the rest were by DPS. There was a DPS representative there who did not speak. We'll get that clarified and, of course, get that to you as soon as we can. But there was a lot of concern about CS gas, tear gas use. Well, that was deployed by DPS. APD used something called a pepper ball, which is essentially just
pepper spray that they put a line down. Basically, it's like they're not shooting it at people.
They're shooting it at the ground.
At spots so no one advances, right? So the crowd does not advance. Now, the police chief was very, very much for peaceful demonstrations. In fact, she even said, her quote was, I'll stand, and if you want to stand in the street for hours, she said she'll help you facilitate that. But once you, and blocking streets for hours, but once you turn it into, violence, then it's no longer, it's no longer peaceful protest.
Right, because it wasn't just officers who were injured, but people, according to Chief Davis, were throwing scooters, and that's violent.
Yeah.
When you start breaking the law, graffiti, spray painting the federal building, and that's criminal mischief. So that's not going to be tolerated. She also mentioned ahead of a protest, another protest this Saturday, they will be prepared. They will once again work with DPS to ensure safety, not only for those people who are protesting, but for officers as well. They expect 100% staffing this Saturday. They support peaceful protest, and again, violence won't be tolerated.
Right, and they're going to do something called, as she said, dialogue policing, where they're going to be going into the crowd and actually talking to the protesters before it gets out of hand, saying, hey, these are the rules. This is what you can do to have a peaceful protest. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. And I think communication is so key because she said, and I think a lot of people would agree, that the peaceful protesters don't want the bad actors in there. They don't want the aggression in there. They don't want to turn it what they're not trying to do.
Here's what we don't know. We don't know if any of the protesters have been released. We know they're friends. People were waiting for them outside the Travis County Jail in downtown all morning long. We showed that to you. Not clear when they will be released. According to the governor, there's more than a dozen who were arrested, 8 from APD. That's all we can confirm at this point. But of course, we'll keep gathering information. Kelsey Sanchez was at that press conference. We heard her ask several questions. We'll bring you all that we have coming up on KB News at 4, 5, and 6. For now, we thank you for joining us here on KB Plus.